Ladies and gentlemen, you are now tuned in to the Rate Limited podcast with your host, Eric Probunche of Repo Prompt. We also have Adam Larson of Goes to Coder on YouTube and myself, Ray Fernando. And we really appreciate the 5-star treatment you've been giving us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Please give yourself a round of applause for this exciting show we have for you today around GPT 5.5, this giant water bottle that we'll be talking about a little bit later because I got access to that fancy party with goblins and things with Sam Altman. We also have some stuff going on with Anthropic and the new rate limits and a whole bunch more stuff. So definitely stay tuned in. Let me hand this off to our wonderful host, Eric Probunche. Take it away.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ray. And I'm very jealous of that water bottle. Didn't manage to get one of those. Hope it holds a lot of water too. So 5.5 just came out, and it actually came out right after we aired our last episode, or right before we aired it, actually. And it's quite the model, I think. A lot of folks are now switching to it from Claude, and this comes on the heels of 4.7 being a bit of a disappointment for many. So I've had a lot of chance to play with it. I was actually lucky enough to get some early access to it as well. And so I, in a time where we only use models for about a month at a time, having 2 weeks earlier is kind of crazy to be able to use it a little bit that far in advance. So I mean, I've been a heavy user of the model. And I have a lot of thoughts, but I want to hear from the rest of you who have been very Claude focused in your work in the past. And I want to know, has 5.5 changed some of your tendencies with picking GPT over Claude? How about you, Adam? Tell me, how have you been using it?
Yeah, it's all I've been using, honestly, since it came out. Well, I committed in the last episode that I was going to give GPT models a go, and it just so happened 5.5 came out. I love it. It feels good. I typically run it at medium. I very rarely crank it up higher than that. Medium just seems great most of the time. I use it for everything. Like literally, I was telling Ray this before the show, but we do a lot of like large collection buying, so like collectible cards. I took 1,500 and some odd cards, fed it into Codex. It parsed it, did all the analysis, hit all the APIs it needed to do. I gave it some rules. I've never had like AI work so well at like doing the data analysis for me.
Yeah.
My Shopify site, I literally just let it build my pages for me now. I manage my Shopify site.
Very nice.
And then in my day job, I use it for everything. So we ran into an issue, pretty major issue in an open source repo that's actually, I mean, it's pretty widely used. And we needed to track it down, put GPT 5.5 on it. Within a very short amount of time, had a good analysis of what the problem likely was. It ended up being correct when we dug into it. I have yet to have a bad experience with it, to be honest with you. And
very crazy.
And I have not got the goblins that anybody else has gotten, but I'm missing out on that end.
Yeah. So just for some context there, a lot of folks started noticing that GPT 5.5 had a tendency of talking about goblins and other creatures. And it turns out that like this is like a quirk of the training they did for personality. You can go read about it on OpenAI's website. But when they were training for the nerdy personality type, which you would expect to talk about goblins and other creatures, that actually leaked into all the other personalities, and now it's like a default quirk of the models that they're gonna probably push out of it in the future, unfortunately. But if you haven't run into it, it's probably because on ChatGPT and on Codex app, the system prompt has an explicit mention in 2 places to say, hey, don't talk about goblins and other little creatures. And if you use it in a third-party app, like which I do in Repo Prompt, I actually replace the system prompt. And so as a result, I was running into it quite a bit. And I saw the model just talk about it quite a bit in terms of sub-agents it was managing. Like, oh, I don't want to leave that little perf goblin running around unattended, stuff like that. It's quite funny to read. So yeah, just a little side tangent there on the goblins. And what about you, Ray? How have you been making use with 5.5?
Yeah, I didn't get early access and I got to just try it live with everyone else. And it was really kind of amazing, like after the fact, like how I've been using it more often. So I feel like I'm super behind now because I've just started to say, I'm just going to point this at everything in my life now. The biggest reason why I switched from Anthropic to GPT 5.5 as my daily driver was because I started noticing Anthropic keep like nerfing or not really complete all those tasks. So like maybe 3 out of like 7 prompts, it just wouldn't really want to do the things that I wanted to from Anthropic, even though I was paying $200 a month in the web app in Cloud Code. Like it just didn't really matter where I went. And I thought that was really weird. I got the best results if I did do like a private API through just their API itself, or just using a third party app that was already paying the full price or whatever. And so there's definitely like this like compute difference. But within GPT 5.5, it's like, yeah, go ahead and do all these tasks. So I've been throwing more and more at it, and I've been extremely surprised at the speed. I think that was the biggest factor too to turn me around. Is that it got a lot faster just by default. So yeah, I think another thing, I was so like heavy to extra thinking pilled, where all of that's now come down to medium for me, and it just gets everything done that I need to, or like complex tasks and things. So one of the things I've started doing is literally just opening up Codex, and then Codex has now become my everything app, because I can start a new chat. I don't have to start a new specific project in a folder or anything like that. Start a conversation. And so I've started to pull in all my different data layers in. And in addition to that, I've also started to hook it up to computer use on my Mac. And the computer use on the Mac is extremely impressive for like, hey, just open my mail app and just, can you scroll through and look through certain things? I'm managing some like insurance stuff for the family, doing some other health things as well. And it's just extremely useful to pull all that stuff together in one area. And so now it's actually motivated me to prepare for taxes for next year. So it's like, hey, I have this Notion thing, I install the Notion plugin, go do the things like, and that's where I set the extra heavy and just let it just rip forever. You know? It doesn't really take that long, and it starts to set up all the different things. And it's like, cool, I'm just going to send these images, and, go ahead and do your thing, and, go ahead and fill out the stuff that we need to for our expense report. And it's just like, I really couldn't do that as much as I wanted to with Anthropic. And I, didn't have that reliability or that trust. And I think that's what really, I had 1,000 paper cuts, and I was like, I'm kind of done. And so I'm pretty happy with GPT 5.5 and inside of Codex too.
You know something?
Yeah, I think I just want to speak a little bit to that difference in trust. Like, I think what's really interesting is the size of the model. Like, you can feel like 5.5 feels like its own big new model, whereas like Opus feels like a distill of something else. Like, it feels like it's like a smaller version of something bigger. And I think you feel the difference in the intelligence, where it's like less spiky, it's more general and rounded. And in terms of that reasoning, like, I don't know if you've tried low reasoning, but if you want that low latency, like it is really nice. And you can tell that like one of the reasons it's faster is because it doesn't have to reason as much for the same intelligence. And I think there's this like chart I saw like recently where it was like intelligence per like I think a reasoning token spent. And if you have like GPT 5.5, like the amount of intelligence density per reasoning token is just like off the charts compared to every other model. And so you're going to get like the similar levels of intelligence for like a fraction of how much you spend. And Opus 4.7 as a like to compare, like it needs way more reasoning tokens than even previous Opus models. So they're going in the other direction, which is a bit unfortunate. But yeah, it's just interesting to observe that. And Adam, you were going to hop in on something, and I want to finish your thought.
Yeah, I mean,
there.
maybe to extend on kind of what you were saying a little bit there too. So if we go back to Claude Sonnet 3.5, to me that was a massive unlock. I remember like that changing thing. 3.7 came out, and it was odd. Do you guys? I don't know if you remember like how odd that was.
Of course, it's very off the rails.
Opus 4.5 came out. To me, that was a huge like unlock. I felt like I was able to do more than I'd ever been able to do. 4.7 has been kind of like almost like 3.7 to me, where it was just odd again. So it's like I was almost on this roller coaster ride of like amazing to like it's kind of worse. GPT 5.5 feels like another step to me, like that. Like it feels faster, and they timed it really well, because to me I think 4.7 has actually shown that Anthropic, they get a model going, and then their tuning actually seems to degrade the model more than improve the model at a certain point. And GPT 5.5 is just, it's amazing. So I'm super curious to see how Anthropic answers this, because I have to imagine they've got to be bleeding folks on the Claude Code side a little bit. And the codex limits are insane. Like I've ran significant, like I hit Claude Code limits all the time. I have a very hard time hitting any codex limits. I feel like there's just a night and day difference on them.
Well, to be fair as well, Codex they have a promo going if you're on the $100 or $200 where they're 2xing until the end of May. So just want to clarify that, like, yes, the limits are absolutely
They're
incredible at the
insane.
moment. Yeah, we'll see where that lands at the end of the month. But for now, it's a great time to be using it. And Anthropic, they had very much restricted the limits because of a compute constraint, and we're going to get into that a little bit more. But they just redoubled their limits. But before we kind of dive into that side of things, I want to just finish up a little bit on 5.5 because there's a lot here that like this model. It's changed a lot in terms of workflows. I think like it feels like it's just another model, but like in terms of the quality of the code you're getting out of it, the amount of trust you can put into the model, I think like it's just made a big difference in terms of how we use these models. And it's like subtle things, right? Like even with 5.4, before you'd have it read a lot of code and it would work, but you'd look at what the code actually looked like, and a lot of times you'd see a lot of like ultra defensive slop, like just code that's just like, oh yeah, if this thing is error, like missing, or this thing's missing, we're gonna have like all these cascading edge cases, like if statements, just to handle every possible thing that could go wrong. And then you'll have 5.5 come in and it writes much cleaner, much more elegant code that just kind of looks more aesthetic, but solves the problem in a better way in many cases, and doesn't have to work as hard to do it. So I really appreciate that about the model. It makes code cleaner, and I really appreciate this trend as well towards models that write better, less defensive code that is able to kind of work better and be more maintainable at the same time. I'm curious, have either of you observed this in your own work?
I had a question for you, maybe Eric. I think, what
Oh,
do you think
sure.
is a good prompt or a tip that others who are watching should use to, like you say, how do you kind of make something more elegant, or what do you kind of tell it to clean up the slop, in essence?
Yeah, I think like like I one of the things I do a lot with repo problems, I build these workflows, and the workflows are kind of patterns. They're like skill files that kind of encode ways of operating and using the different tools available to kind of get to good outcomes. And I try to make them general purpose. Like I just made one for optimization that adds like metrics, and it uses the Oracle, which is like a secondary model to kind of get to a good north star of where we should go, and validates and adds that external validation. It's a bit complicated, but it's like an auto research loop with a third party kind of checking in on the work. In terms of what I do to deslop or make code cleaner, like a lot of it involves like doing things in multiple steps. Like you want to make sure that you have not all the same context window kind of doing all of the work. What I tend to find with GPT models in particular, but most models like encounter this, is that if you give them a big task to say, hey, like clean up all this code, it's going to try and say like, hey, I'm going to find the most like minimal, least invasive way to do this. And then it kind of goes ahead. But if you empower the model, and this is where subagents are really useful, is if you make the model kind of an orchestrator, or a model that's like in charge of delegating something, it's kind of more prone to being, okay, I'm the manager, we're going to do this big task, but I'm not doing it all myself, so I can do it. It's less anxious about context, and it's able to kind of delegate that work and do it more fully. So in terms of keeping clean code, there's like two things you really want to think about. One is having the model really sprawl the code base and like understand the implications everywhere. So like you can use research subagents for this. And then the second part is having all that context, knowing everything that is in place, having a model really look at that and holistically try to plan like the decomposition. And for me with repo prompt, I use this thing called context builder, which basically has the models pull in all the relevant files, and then I give that to Oracle, which analyzes all that context at once. So it sees everything from a bird's eye view, which makes that part simpler. But with different agents, if you're able to kind of use these subagents carefully, like you can get to similar outcomes there. And I think it's really important, like splitting up context windows to make sure that the model is really thinking about how to properly view things holistically. Like you can't just have an agent go off; it needs to see the bigger picture, and that's not always easy to do without some careful prompting. So yeah, I'm curious, Adam, have you done things like this in your cleanup work, or like I'm curious how you use subagents too in your day to day.
Oh yeah, and I see the same thing that you're talking about too. Where if you say, "Hey, I want you to go," be vague. Like, "Hey, I want you to go clean up something or improve something." It's gonna pick
Mm-hmm.
the. I'm gonna remove some logs that don't need to be there. That's like what it's gonna kind of
Yeah.
tend to. So yeah, I totally have done a lot of the same things. So one of the issues that we ran into, and if you think about the mass scale that we operate at, like we're not like Meta or Facebook scale, but it is a massive scale, like, many, 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 many millions of customers interacting. And when you start looking at distributed systems and where they could fall short, there's usually multiple repos, there's multiple infrastructure decisions that happen. And so, like, we were running into this one particular issue with scaling, and you put AI, you basically mono repo it. So you bring everything into a single environment, you use subagent, you mono repo it, and just have it crawl the entire thing and be like, hey, this is what we're seeing. We feel like it's a red herring. Like, we have some theories, like, go see what you can figure out. And it did an incredible job. I'm talking open source, like, analysis to our code base analysis. And the report that we got back from it was incredible. Like, if you really guide it, you can get some incredible recommendations, and you can have it go execute those recommendations, in your code for you.
Yeah, and to that point, when you come up with that kind of a template for how to kind of carry out these investigations, it's really, really useful to encode that into a skill so that you can reuse that same concept and workflow again. Because I think these patterns of how you have the model work and what tools it should call and how it should sprawl out or research and give it clear structure, like that's when the models do really good work. And I find that GPT 5.5 is incredibly good at following these rigid like workflows, much more so than any Opus model right now, which is what can be a big difference maker if you're working in these large code bases. Yeah. On that note as well, Codex just shipped a goal mode, and if you're not familiar, the main like reason that it's there is that when a Codex model runs, it will kind of end its task. And not so much with 5.5, but with 5.4, it was very guilty of this. Would be like, well, if you want, I can do this next, or if you want, I can do this now. But like the model, like it will do some work, and then it'll be like, okay, this is a good stopping point. And if you want it to kind of be really exhaustive, sometimes you have to babysit it and be like, hey, like keep adding this. And Goal kind of like with a little bit of glue, it kind of like chains these prompts together. So like you have like an initial goal, and then it kind of works, and then it'll remind the model, hey, like that's your goal, did you like fully complete it? And then it like is like, no, we could do more. Then it'll just keep going. And so if you have like something really ambitious, you can just let it run for days. I saw the other day someone was running it for 48 hours, like just nonstop, and they had 3 sessions just going off. So a great way to burn your token use. If you got extra limits to burn, like this will do it. But it's interesting to see, hacks and new ways of getting models to run for extremely long run times. So that's cool. And I'm curious, have you, Ray, have like managed to get goals running or anything set up for like long horizon work?
I'm thinking about a refactor that I just did, and I'm trying to think about wrapping goal for actually like QA testing. So just giving it some like, hey, act as a user. I want you to just focus on user testing. And then give goal, because Codex can just launch stuff on my machine and do user testing. I just want to say, hey, your goal is to act as a QA engineer, do these first P1 passes, which are literally just like, what are all the functional tests that should just work as a user and should not be break. And I think that was a big thing that if anyone wants to take away any quality, if you want to make your app just high quality, just make sure everything works at a just functional level that's visible in the UI. It goes a very long way. From people like, doing that. So I think that's what I want to throw goal at. I haven't done that yet. I'm just trying to organize that and get that going. So I need more Mac minis. I need more hardware to just run these things. So I could just run them without with my laptop, holding my laptop, like running around the bus or something like that. The laptop over.
Right on. I wanted to ask you one more thing, Adam. While you're working with 5.5 a lot, I'm curious, I last time you mentioned your coworker was kind of switching to GPT, and I'm curious, like, are you seeing GPT 5.5 kind of spread around the company a bit more than Opus? Like, are you seeing a lot of other people switch to it?
It's a tricky thing to answer because there are a lot of people that are in love with Claude Code. So there's like the cursor people for sure. I'm seeing it, like them switch over. The Claude Code folks, I've been trying to convince them to like go try GPT 5.5. But it's one of those things where like I think they would if they had the opportunity to go, if they didn't feel like they had to use Claude Code, like that was the thing that they know. So I think Claude Code has some kind of, it kind of linchpinned in to their ecosystem currently.
They added a migration assistant recently in Codex that helps you move over from Claude to Codex. So maybe worth pointing them to that if they want to give it a shot.
Yeah, it's interesting because like Codex is So our approved tools currently are Cursor. We have Augment Code. We have Claude Code. We have Cursor CLI. We have it's publicly known that we did $100 million like deal or plan with OpenAI, but we don't have
Wow.
Codex. We don't have Codex approval. It's like, what the heck? So we'll get there though.
Gotta get on
I
that.
know.
Oh man. Oh geez. Well, I hope you have more people give it a shot because this I think it's a really great model. All right. So we talked a little bit earlier about rate limit changes, and so it just came out at the Anthropic event that was this week that they actually made a deal with SpaceX to use their entire capacity for the Colossus One data center that Elon was so famously kind of going and working with Jensen to set up in record time. I think it was 4 months. So crazy huge data center, 300 megawatts that is now fully operated by Anthropic, and that let them double their hourly rate limits for the different plans, which is pretty nice. Um, it's very interesting to see Anthropic partner with Elon after the two have had such spats in the past on ethics and AI use. But I think like in this moment where Anthropic has had to cut off users and really squeeze people with like peak hour rate limits, like they needed to do something to get the compute, and it sounds like they did. So I'm curious, Ray, what are your thoughts on this partnership they're doing?
I think to me it's becoming very clear that there's the layers to this cake.
Oh yeah.
I think that the bigger thing is just going to be like get the people to show up, provide. I'm pretty sure that part of the deal is just collecting data, right? Like just hey, you can use my stuff, but we're going to train on all of this data. Super smart.
I don't think so. I don't think it's a data agreement there. I don't think Anthropic would be down with that. Yeah,
I
maybe.
don't know. Like I didn't get to see the deal, but
yeah,
there's got to. I mean, yeah, but even then, like it's not. There's a lot of profiling that could be done for a lot of this type of stuff that could be useful or not. But I think I think it's a really smart thing that they've done. I think there's also like a bigger game that is probably being played. It's just like model training, having access to GPUs, trying to like what's the bigger industry? Is space bigger than what we have currently on Earth? To me, there's also like maybe some like background political play in some way that like in terms of like if the government is going to give a lot of money, the government has given a lot of money to these types of companies. So if you get a government contract, that's pretty much like the best welfare check. I mean, the best bag of money that these people can get. And like that's kind of guaranteed income to survival. So if they're going to be focused more on that and they have this hardware that's just sitting there, it's just a good way to kind of sort of bootstrap and converge on these two different places. So I think if they're chasing space and they're chasing like this big space race to put AI in space, even with like NVIDIA and so forth, it's already kind of like this combined superpower that's just kind of going up there, and all the stuff that's being placed down here also has to be up in space, and like getting those relationships established is also pretty good. It's really awkward that like Elon was just totally two-faced about this. It's like, yeah, I hate this company. Da, da, da. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, let's go ahead and sign a deal. Money talks.
And he said, oh, actually, they're all good people. But there's a clause that he listed too, which is really interesting. He's like, if he feels that Anthropic's models are not good for humanity in the future, he reserves the right to pull their compute at any moment on a moment's notice. So I'm very curious to see if that clause ever comes to bite Anthropic in the future. But I don't know. I think the money that's coming in will be quite valuable to SpaceX, and if it's a public company, you can't just rogue them. Like if it's like a quarter of your revenue or even half your revenue at that point, I don't know. Curious, Adam, what are your thoughts on this deal?
I think if you look at pretty much any of the CEOs in the AI space, Elon included, it's all a marketing ploy. Like when you're building Grok and you're launching it, of course you're going to try to like throw everybody else under the bus, and you'd like to think. Some people get behind Elon like he's actually the arbiter of truth. He's no different than the CEO of Anthropic or the CEO of NVIDIA or the CEO of OpenAI. Like, it's all like, at the end of the day, it's all going to come down to money. And this probably just financially made sense to Anthropic. They probably are paying Elon's probably like, yeah, we got Colossus 1, we got Colossus 2. Colossus 2 is what we're using now. Colossus 1 is kind of just sitting there. Let's make a crap ton of money on it. And now he has to kind of go back on the underhanded comments that he had around them being called misanthropic and like they weren't good for humanity. But again, to me, it's a marketing ploy. Like, how do you get the most fundraising? How do you get the most attention? You try to make the other people look worse. You try to scare people.
Yeah.
You try to hype things up. That's my take on it. I think it totally makes sense. I am curious about that clause, which I've thought about too, because it would be very funny if somebody ticks Elon off and he like pulls them one day, and I could totally see that happening.
You never know. It's very unpredictable working with Elon. You never know what's going to happen. Well, I think we'll just have to wait and see. But for now, if you're a Claude user, I think that's great news because all of a sudden, you get way more rate limits. And, I think for the people who are trying to use this as a daily driver for work, like, I think this makes all the difference. So now I want to switch back gears.
Rate limits higher.
Claude Design. Oh, yeah. Well, they haven't changed the limits with this, eh? Like, it was just for the...
I still get like 5 prompts, bro.
Then
I'm done for the week.
Brutal.
Yeah.
brutal.
Yep.
Well, you got to make our own Claude Design and just route Opus through it. I think totally doable. There's actually a startup called Magic Path that maybe they're working in this route too. So, take a look at them. So Codex is now an everything app. They released their co-work equivalent, their ability to kind of have a more dynamic way of presenting, a little bit less code oriented, a little bit more Figma or Gmail or what have you connected in there. And with the browser use and the computer use and all of these app connectors, it gets becoming quite the hub where you can kind of just get all kinds of work done in there. It sounds like, Ray, you're really into that and you're making real strides there. You were previously very, Claude desktop pilled and you're working co-work there. I'm curious, like, how are you feeling the differences are for you in what you're able to accomplish with these models?
I think the memory system has just become super strong and sticky on
really the memory
platform.
System.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they have this new thing that's still under development called the Chronicle. It will burn rate limits. Basically, just takes screenshots and does a screen recording. And it requires like the Mac OS. It's only specifically for the Mac. You need their screen recording, the accessibility permissions, and then it's basically just going to take these snapshots. But the amazing part is that like I'm just creating new chats. And so normally I would try to do this in OpenClaw, but now I'm just kind of doing a lot of it in Codex.
Really?
Yeah, any workflows that I'm doing, it just kind of memorizes them. And it's hey, go do that thing again, and like, I'm going to doing that. And it sort of tries to infer those things. So the personalization, as the more I'm using it, kind of sucks me really right in. And so I just so want this on my phone, that's why I have OpenClaw, because now I have to be on my laptop open, but so I'm trying to figure out how to get my OpenClaw to drive my machine to do the same tasks. It's like, hey, go type this into Codex app on the desktop and run this thing, so it can control my machine there, because it can literally control everything on the computer. There's something secret about like the way people have been able to tap into Apple's accessibility system to control a lot of the computer, and Codex's model is really, really good with that. Just from talking to some of the employees at the OpenAI party, it appears that quite a bit of them know kind of what's going on underneath the hood in the operating system, and kind of know where to tap in, and are very extremely experienced in this workspace. And I think they also acquired a computer use company.
They did. Well, they acquired like a Mac automation company for like using AI, and that was doing all of this. I think they hadn't even released their app yet, and they acquired them. But I think they're ex-Apple folks, very, very skilled at knowing the APIs and what. So you need those kinds of folks. And honestly, this kind of shows like, the Mac is currently the place to be if you want the most automation. It's a bit unfortunate, like the other OSs are getting hung to dry a bit, but Windows just doesn't have this kind of tooling, and Linux does, but way more, mixed and match, and the adoption there is a lot lower. So Mac it is, Curious, Adam, does this make you feel a bit of FOMO on the Mac and getting you hooked up for all this automation?
So I was in Best Buy the other day, and the Neo came out. I'm like, man, that's like such an inexpensive laptop. Like I should just grab one. So I'm like, I asked the lady, I'm like, hey, I would like to grab the larger like Neo green one. Of course, they didn't have it in stock. I'm like, okay, I'll do the smaller one. She's like, we don't have that one in. We don't have a green one at all. I'm like, all right, I'll do the larger silver one. she's like, oh, we don't have that. We have the smaller. So I'm like, okay, I'm not meant to get a laptop here. So I'm just. So yes, I have had FOMO about all this stuff.
Oh
To answer your
man,
question.
just the hairs away from
Yeah.
getting full maxed in. Oh jeez. Yeah, the automation is nuts though. I think they are bringing computer use to Windows in the near future, but we'll see TBD on that one. But crazy times, and like I think it also shows a little bit about like the future of working with these tools, where to your point, Ray, with Chronicle, like it's kind of learning how you're using the app and kind of recording them to automate in the future. There's a little bit of weirdness there for me, where I'm basically teaching the AI how to do what I'm doing for work, and it's learning on the go, and I'm like opting into this because it's making my life easier. But if I'm working for a big company and they're chronicling all these chronicles, that kind of maybe brings up some uneasiness around layoffs and having people kind of train their replacement. So and today, this week, we also had some news with Coinbase in particular, and making a big layoff announcement related to AI specifically. I mean, Coinbase, as you know, is a crypto company, and crypto is very volatile, and we have up and down, and it's not like exactly an up market at the moment for Bitcoin and such. So it's not like the hottest time for people investing, so that really affects their bottom line. But they're trying to look ahead and see like, okay, well, with this fluctuating seasons of crypto, like how are we spending money? And they're leaning heavily into token use, and they decided that, well, like they don't need as many people to do all the work that they're doing, and they're kind of vibe shipping a little bit, going overnight AI code straight to production, which for a financial company is a little concerning, to be honest. But I'm curious, how are you feeling about this, Adam? Like in terms of the layoff story, like I know this is hitting home for you, and you've seen several other companies make similar changes there. So what are your thoughts there?
I've had quite a few people in my network get hit recently. PayPal also did a massive layoff, 20%. Coinbase put out that letter that got a lot of really interesting responses on X. And one of the things was we're going to have non-technical people ship code to production that people laser focused in. And that is scary.
It is.
So to be fair, Brian did reply back and say, we are going to have humans like vigorously review any code before it gets to production. So it's like, anyway,
right, you say that.
Yeah, exactly.
Just save face a little bit. Yeah,
exactly. So I've been thinking about this entire dynamic a lot, and having been in the ship, code is not the bottleneck in the majority of companies that I've been part of in my entire life. Code is really not the bottleneck. Like we can write code even before AI. Code was not the bottleneck. It's testing, productionalizing, figuring out what to build, the design process, the iteration on things. So that's the cross-team coordination tax that happens. And I do agree smaller teams need to be... So I don't disagree that some of these layoffs are probably needed, but I think the AI side of it is probably just to save face in the market. That's my general sentiment. And I also think there's a cost factor as a part of this. So if you think about it, like I can write code a lot faster than I could 5 years ago, but I still get blocked by all the other things that keep me from being able to ship quickly. So let's say, just hypothetically, I'm 20% faster, but I'm spending 30%. I'm actually spending more than what I'm productively gaining in AI costs because my AI costs are very high. So now the company has been able to move faster, technically, a little bit, but now is spending more money on AI. So they need to. So we have to figure out on the AI side, like, how do we actually get past the cross-team coordination tax? How do we actually get the quality? Like the issue that I have with the statements that are said about engineers going away. It's like, look at any large-scale system. There's no way AI can manage some of the things that we manage on a day-to-day basis. It just can't. Like there are certain things that are so complex that span such a wide breadth, they can't do it. And a lot of it is like architectural engineering, distribution, infrastructure, things like that are just impossible to do. So I think it's those two factors in my mind. I think some of it's saving face. They overhired. They know they're going slower. They need to reduce their team size. So they blame it on AI. And the second thing, I do think there's a cost factor. I think teams... I've talked to so many engineers and so many companies, and it's like AI at all costs. Use as many tokens. Jensen said you should be spending, what was it, like 2x your salary on tokens.
Yeah. Yeah.
To do that, you got to go 3 times faster just to break even. It's wild.
So I want to like take a moment though, because the thing is, you know, if you're spending all this money on AI, like where's the ROI at this point?
Exactly.
You know, like are you getting 2x revenue from 2x spend on your engineering? Probably not.
I don't think so.
You know, are you getting like you have to look at what are you shipping? Is what you're shipping adding value to the company? You know, are you adding technical debt? Are you fixing things? Are you actually improving things? I think for some teams the answer is yes. Like you are moving faster and is adding a lot of value. Like if you're an AI lab, you know, working on your AI app, like adding more functionality around the LLM is you know, net value. And it's in this space is so competitive, like they need to move fast, and Codex is like really leaning into this, but Claude is as well, and they were doing it first. So I think for them, you know, you can clearly see like the ROI is there. But I think for folks that are like just running a normal business, you know, especially a random SaaS, like, you know, your users, they don't need 10 times more features to, you know, you're not going to get 10 times more users with 10 times more features. So like there's a big overhead there that you have to think about. And you also have to think about like, are users using these tokens efficiently? Like if you're burning 10 million tokens on something stupid where you're just kind of, you know, spinning something in a loop, or you're running a stupid goal that just goes on forever, like, are you actually getting your money's worth from those tokens? And I think at some point the crackdown will come. And Uber announced recently that, you know, they hit their quota for the year in about 3 months, which is kind of insane to think about. So these tokens are getting more expensive. People are using them more, and what are we getting for it? Curious, Ray, what do you think about all this?
I think about it from a couple different levels. One, there's like you said, for the messaging part, I feel like that the CEOs are doing a massive disservice in some of the media around this, basically blaming AI for replacing jobs, when there is basically something that's going on in this AI space. So they're basically trying to conflate these two different ideas. Right?
Yeah.
From an underlying technology, as engineers, we're playing with this technology. We know there's capabilities to be here, powerful. They may not be here today, but we don't know what that future looks like. The second part of it is like operational. So kind of putting on my operations hat. So it's like, there is something to be said about really tiny teams reforming to move towards a new goal. And I've seen this a lot whenever you pull experts in, right? Like creating a new device type and the new direction and a whole new like $1 trillion to add $2 to $3 trillion of value to the company can take 10 years plus, but getting the right people in the room, leveraging the existing operating system that had already been developed and other things that had already been kind of laid out for the company. And then those smaller groups of people who are the architects, who are the bigger thinkers, who can really kind of set the leverage, kind of set the new floor for where things are going. And there's something about when you almost have like a big forest fire and there's new growth that happens. I feel like we're in this era right now of like a bunch of work that we thought was going to be capable is kind of being redone. And I think back to the days of Yahoo versus Google. Like the reason why Google took off is because they had the right floor of saying, we're going to set up these robots, you know, these machines that go around and scrape things on the internet in this really programmatic way, where Yahoo still hired people to actually curate news and put stuff onto news feeds, and people were still subscribing to them. And then eventually it was really clear where that was going. And maybe there's a similar thing happening here, whether we realize it or not, where workflows are being rethought of, you know, this engineering workflow, and maybe Jensen's encouragement to spend more tokens is more of like people to really rethink their workflows and think of it more as like managers, not necessarily as like single person doing single tasks, which is what makes Codex things really interesting. It's like you say, it's watching me work, but I don't want to wake up 30 minutes scrolling through emails, responding to stuff I didn't respond to. Like, you know, I do want to hand that off to models and just only bring things up that are really critical that I need to, you know, move the ball forward at actually going to drive economic value. So that's kind of the way that I'm looking at it. And I think this is a good time for individuals to, if you've been laid off, it's not necessarily something that's a reflection on you, because, you know, I've also been laid off too. So it's like, it's more of like, how can I take this opportunity to reskill myself, to look at this from a different perspective? and work on my things and just let go of all previous assumptions and just, just really just start playing with things. I think this is kind of where you'll actually start to find how valuable you are because you have unique insights in deep places that you may not realize that you can leverage.
Yeah, getting your hands dirty and trying these things is super important right now, and I think it's an opportune time with these plans offering pretty generous rate limits to getting started, and I think just learning how the tools work, what a context window is, like all of these things are just basic table stakes to what the future of knowledge work is, and I do think that like you will have a job around this for a long while. I think it's just you will have to lean into this stuff, and I think for many engineers in particular, there's a bit of a mourning going on because the job that they once knew is pretty much dead at this point. The way of working where you can just think about a problem and code it by hand and take your time with it and having the space to kind of be able to do this work like that's kind of gone. And the thing is too that's a little bit disconcerting for especially senior engineers I think right now, and seeing this news of, oh yeah, non-technical people should be pushing PRs, is that like the seniors used to be a sort of quality gate at these companies where they would say no to things and be like, no, like we can't build this feature because one, it doesn't make sense technically, and two, it's just not the right way to kind of go about this whole problem, and you can kind of trust their expertise to kind of allow that quality filter to kind of be around. But now you have you have a junior who comes around and is like, oh yeah, I vibed it up in a couple of hours. Here you go. Or the PM is like, yeah, we can do this feature. Look, I prototyped it right here and code slop, but like whatever, it works. Like let's ship this. And you have a lot less of that gating that goes on at these companies. And I think over time, it's going to be a pressure point on these companies and cause a bit of dysfunction. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on this, Adam? You're a senior engineer. You've gone through this yourself, I'm sure.
Man, honestly, when you were talking about one of those, the example just now, you gave me PTSD. So just recently, so here's the other challenge that we run into. If you do have these like mid-level and junior engineers building or rebuilding parts of the app in a very short amount of time, like in its own isolation, so like greenfield, and then demoing it to people that are non-technical, that are business holders.
Oh yeah,
and then
the stakeholders.
Yeah, and so then they're like, all right, let's go ahead and let's get this rolled out. And it's like,
ship it. It's there.
So it's like, we can't do that. This is literally like a prototype that's not connected to anything. Like there's no scalability to this thing at all. But it's like,
no, it works. Like it needs to be out the door tomorrow.
It's a very hard balance because it's like, I want the juniors and folks to do these cool experiments, but they also need to understand the reality of what it means to ship something. And like at the end of the day, the customer is the most important thing. Like if they get a bad experience, you're going to lose them. You're going to burn their trust. They're not going to pay you. They buy your software for a purpose, and if you break that, it ends up being bad. And that's been like one of the hardest battles that I've had. Your other point you were making, Eric, which I think, talking about jobs and laid off, the most valuable people right now are those that know how to build agents. Every company's building them. Very few people actually really understand how to build them. And I've spent a significant amount of time trying to up-level folks to understand simple context management and what needs to happen there. Like building the core agent loop, very simple. But so previously, do you guys remember when Anthropic said that like developing Claude codes is kind of like vibes? Do you remember them talking about like vibe development? I've actually come on board with that. If you think about video games, like what makes a good video game? It's really like, how's it feel? Does it feel good? Like, is a gameplay loop good? Like, if something bad happens, is it funny or is it annoying? Like, there's certain things that agents are the same way. Like
they absolutely are.
You can't like measure the vibes of what a good agent is, and you almost need that artistic sort of like, it's almost like a video game in my mind. I've been thinking about it a lot more like that. I've been trying to explain that to folks. It's because like a lot of engineers are like, I want to know the exact scope of things. Well, I'm like, no. Think about a video game. Like, when is a video game done? Like, it needs to be good. It needs to feel good. Just because it does the thing does not mean it's shippable. And like trying to push on that. So anyway, that's my thought on all that.
No, I think that's a really good point. I was actually having a convo on Twitter the other day with someone about this, and like there's just, when you're building an agent, there's no substitute for the vibe of the agent, because it's like, there's the feel, but there's also like how does the model behave when it's doing certain things, like because you have the prompts and the tools, and where is it getting hung up, like what is it struggling with, and if it does a failed tool call, like there's probably a reason it failed. And part of it might be the user's prompt, so then maybe your system prompt should account for the user's kind of misgivings, or maybe your tool is too strict and finding ways of loosening that up. So a lot of it is just trying it, feeling, getting a feel for it, getting a feel for how the model behaves with it. Like it's just, you just got to use it, and people want to put numbers to it. They want to run all these optimization algorithms on it, and like DSPY is like a big one, and I think there is some value to it, but like a lot of the time it's just sitting down, feeling, getting a feel for it and seeing how it goes. And it's kind of a weird place to be, like these models, building agents around them. It's nothing like we've built in the past, and that's why it's a whole new skill set to gain and experiment with. So
do you agree that it's kind of similar to video games? Like it kind of...
Yeah, I mean, if you look at what Claude said, that the Claude code is like a game engine where it needs to run at 60 FPS. Oh geez, in the terminal, awesome. which is a bit funny, but no, like the UX of it is
like OpenClaw and Hermes, because they're kind of these agentic frameworks, and they have different vibes, each of them, right? There's two different camps. They're almost fighting against each other, right?
Right.
Is it kind of the same vibe too? Like,
well, so I think for them, there's a little bit more to it too, because of the personal aspect of it. Like that in there, it's not as much about the productivity of the agent, though it is like in part. But it's more about how does it feel to talk to the agent? Like, do you feel like it's listening to what you're saying? There's like a whole art to that. Like, do you feel like when you ask it to do something, does it actually get the thing done? And that's kind of like all in the context engineering there to make sure that it's able to properly handle, your crons and all that stuff. And then there's like, like when you ask it to do something, like, is it taking enough initiative to kind of be proactive and do things? And there's like a line there, a slider where some users want it to be extremely proactive and some users, want to be a bit more measured about it. And so that's kind of like in the balance there too. And I think Hermes is more of, kind of more of a robot, like we're going to get shit done and here's the tools. And OpenClaw is, it's very much about its soul MD file and its personality and the vibes of talking to it. And is it going to come up with a joke? Does it feel funny, like to talk to? Like, am I enjoying myself with it? So I think there's a lot around that like, shows people like why they picked it, beyond just the fact that it was like a novel thing that an agent could do all this stuff. So,
can we do like a little mini video game exercise, like a character selector right now for like agents, like Adam and Eric? I want to know, like, what are some of those properties, like maybe 3 to 5 properties that, if you were to, if we were to, like, I were to build my own agents and kind of Street Fighter style, like select this one, what attributes are you looking for? What should we define for like this vibe that you're talking about?
So maybe I'll answer that with another point that I've been actually, I've come to recently, which is, I was working with a couple teams and they were like, okay, we're going to do some strict evals. We're going to make some stuff happen. And then I was like, we're making a lot of assumptions what good looks like to our customers here.
Yeah.
If we are evaling with our biases on what good looks like, I wonder if we should rather be focusing on how do we let the agent adapt to the user more and be to their... So I'm in the marketing space. Marketing from one company to another, very different. Building evals around a marketing use case would work for some percentage of customers, but then the other percentage of customers may hate it. And you can very clearly take and do this theory manually by taking marketing content and showing it to 5 different people. You're going to get 5 different answers. So how do you judge that? So to me, to your point, Ray, I've kind of come to the conclusion that I think the agent needs to be able to adapt to what the user wants. Like, it needs to be not so rigid that you can't steer it, and it needs to have some level of retention of that information so that it can pull back and understand what your preferences are. Of course, it needs to have personality. It needs to be fast. There is a level of like just simple stuff. Like, it needs to feel good. The micro interactions that happen are more important than a person would consider. Like, if you're just sitting there with a loading spinner waiting for the text to come in, simple things like text streaming are very important. Like, you should see things coming in, or reasoning update. But you see people building agents all the time that are just like miss all these fundamental things.
So I just want to throw in a word. There's a technical term for games. It's called juice,
Yep.
Sounds very
You need some
very
juice.
weird, but yeah. So juice, and there's a nice YouTube video. I think it's called Juice It or Lose It, if I'm not mistaken, on YouTube, which explains like the process of adding juice to a game like Arkanoid Brick Breaker. And it's really important to learn. Like think just like each interaction where the ball bounces, is there screen shake? Do things animate in? Like all these things really change the feel for how the experience of playing the game is. And even though the gameplay is identical, you're getting a very different feel and experience coming away from it, afterwards, and how engaged you are in the game. And so I think these kinds of things, like you're saying, text streaming and all of that, that's all juice and cosmetic stuff that keeps you engaged, that keeps the dopamine flowing as you're engaging with it, and you feel good about it. Even though it might be slow, if you're feeling like something's happening, then you're all of a sudden more prone to like being okay with waiting and all that stuff. So sorry, I wanted you to continue. I just wanted to chime in a little bit with that.
No, I mean that is exactly right. Like that is exactly correct. So there's like those parts of it, right? The way I would think about it. The other thing that Eric talked about is like, does it do the job that you want it to do? And there is a level of that, and this is very complicated because it could do the job wrong. But same thing with the video game. Like you're gonna have bugs that happen in the game, but sometimes they're comically fun. Like sometimes it actually makes the game better. How do you make your agent experience so that if something bad happens, it doesn't feel like you hit a dead end? Like it actually feels like you can continue or that you're not stuck. Like so things like that just make a lot of like very important for an agent experience in my mind. So that's the way I've been thinking about it, and that's kind of the direction that I'm driving in a lot of stuff that we're building.
Yeah. And it's tough because like you have all these metrics and the proactiveness and how agentic the model is and how capable it is to keep going, or when you want it to kind of just do a thing and stop. Like all of these measure on other things. Everything's kind of a trade-off in terms of latency or success rate or token use, because these agents are expensive too. You have to think about all of this. But some of it does come down to the model, and you do need a really powerful model, and people are trying to cut corners a little bit on this front because they want something cheap to run, but sometimes you can't really cut that corner. But just in terms of the model doing the thing that you asked, like I do find GPT 5.5, and to OpenAI's credit, they've improved a lot on this, because in the past they were the worst on the model kind of doing what I said versus what I meant. And now I find 5.5 is the one that really goes in and follows my intent the most. And often what ends up to get that good result, you need context. And I find if you're using these models, like adding a screenshot sometimes or adding some support documentation, it goes a long way in kind of pointing the model so you can both look at the same thing, and it will infer a lot of things from your prompts based on that. So a good agent could also, be really proactive about including peripheral context. Like, early on with Cursor, one of the things they did is that they would keep track of, okay, what files do I have open? Where's my cursor kind of focused on right now? All these different things about your interaction with the app that kind of help the agent know, okay, this is what the user's talking about. And I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit to kind of be figured out with these app experiences. And I think, at one point we are going to hit walls with running it in like WhatsApp or Telegram, because you can't really add these things. But if you're running it in a custom app, like I think that's where you're going to be able to get a lot of lift just from little things. So yeah, curious.
To your point on that, Eric, the way that I've been bifurcating this in my head is there really are three major surface areas that agents are exposed in. There's going to be third party. So you're going to do like MCPs, and you're going to have like OpenAI has their apps. You're limited to what they give you access to. So there should be good experiences, but they're probably not going to be great for the things you're building. Then there's the personal desktop experience, where you basically are opening up so the things like Cursor, for example, those should be phenomenal because you have full control over that. Like those should be exceptional. And then you have your first party surfaces, which are in the cloud. And those should be good. They should be great. Probably not phenomenal, because you're still limited by some things. You don't have access to the file system as much. Like there's certain things that you don't have access to. So you can kind of start thinking about like your agent development of, we should make a good experience, as good as we can in these third-party surfaces, but we're limited by XYZ. And I could tell you a bunch of things you get limited by, and it just makes sense. They've got an agent that has to call a million other MCPs and apps and things like that. Like they have to have limit. But in your own environment, you should be able to crush it.
Just to pause you on that though, because I think, there's something about the blend there where you want, like, these things are all connected in a way. You're working on an agent in the cloud, but that agent in the cloud can be connected to your personal computer and control it and get context from it. And then, like, when you're talking in WhatsApp to your OpenClaw or your Hermes, like, it does have access to your computer and it can pull that information. So I think, like, the blend of your computer being involved and the cloud being involved and maybe your phone being involved, like, all of these things, they're all becoming connected in a way to get that great experience. So I just wanted to caveat that a little bit, because I think, like, right now in isolation, you're right, but I think as things go on, like, it won't just be one or the other.
You're right. They might, like, actually converge into like one surface area that interacts with all of them. You're totally right.
Yeah. Just AMP released their updated agent the other day, and one of the big things that they did was, like, your the terminal app is still there, but now it's a remote control, so, like, you can start a chat on the web and then the agent can control your computer because of the terminal app, so you don't have to look at the terminal app anymore yourself. And I think that's just, like, an increasingly common thing that's going to come around, where there's already Codex remote control apps that you can download. Ones like Kitty Litter, where it does the same thing, uses the app server and just controls your computer for you. So yeah, more and more of these services are all blending. Things are all connecting, and it's going to be wild, like, having orchestrator agents that just kind of talk and command all these different agents running in different services. Like, this is going to be a weird future, expensive one though.
So I'm going to set a challenge for myself is to build an agent, and I'll come back with a demo in a couple weeks, and I'll show you my app demo.
Very excited.
But it's going to be very video game-esque. And I think I think the era I want to move towards, because, like,
very good.
Everyone's showing the same little, Google search bar, but I want to change this paradigm. That's a really cool idea. Thank you guys. That's really awesome.
Yeah. And please do watch that video, Juice It or Lose It, because I think it'll give you a lot of inspiration for your app. I think it'll be really good. Yeah.
Yeah. There's quite a few videos that I remember watching where I don't know if this is the same one, Eric, but they'll start with a very stale game and then slowly start iterating on it, and it ends up being
exactly right.
It's like this insane thing at the end. You're like, holy crap, that is insane.
Yeah. No, that's exactly what they do in this video. That's probably the one you're talking about.
Probably is, yeah.
That's why it's such a good one. It's a legendary video. Yeah.
I just pulled up like a website, and they have, like, the little was it the breakout or the brick builder?
Yeah.
And so, like, it just shows, like, black and white, but then they're changing colors, and, like, little thing has a little trail following it. And as it hits a little thing, it shakes the screen. I was like, oh my gosh.
But there's math to this too, right? Like, there's all these, like, easing curves that you learn about in Juice, and it's just a lot of fun stuff. So yeah, a lot of stuff for you to do, Ray. I think it'll be a fun time to explore, and you just got to try it. Like, honestly, the biggest thing is you got to sit there in the driver's seat, try it. Does it feel good? No, let's try something else. You can't just, like, fully automate that stuff. Like, you gotta have your hands dirty.
Which is why building agents is such a skill right now. So if you did get laid off and you are, like, looking for something to learn, focus on that. Like, it is incredibly in demand.
Yeah. And a lot of it is around the tool. So find a vertical where that agent really makes sense, and try to, like, lean into making that a really good automated experience. Often what's really good is you have something very complicated and you want to make it accessible to people. Having an agent lets you kind of hide that complexity behind prompts and tools. And there's a lot of skill in making that work well for the agent too, because the agent needs to understand it as well, not just, it takes work for that. So yeah, give it a shot and let us know if you build something cool out of that, and let us know if you're thinking about Juice in your apps and your agents. All right. Well, I think this is a good spot to kind of wind down for today. I think it was a really cool chat here just around all of this stuff. And I mean, the layoffs are definitely a bummer, and hopefully, you all have a good career stability there. But it's definitely an interesting time to explore and experiment, and there's a lot to be building. And I think leaning in is the right move right now. I think you can have a serious edge if you understand what this stuff is and start compounding that knowledge and understanding. And by the time this stuff is going to keep changing, like, if you're staying up to date with it, like, there's a huge gain for you in doing so.
I would also encourage people to build community as well. So if you know other people who are in the same boat, bring them together and just say, like, we're just going to learn agents. Let's come together as a group, meet up at a library, wherever, coffee shop. I think that's going to be more important than ever, because the more you stay in isolation, the harder it is, to be honest. And there's probably a lot of people around you in the same company. Just try to like move in that direction. I think it's going to help a lot too.
Yeah, learn together, build peer groups. I think that's super important. This is a great point, Ray. Yeah. And what about you, Adam? Any closing thoughts for today?
No, great episode though. This was, and again, it is a bummer anytime we see these layoffs, but I do think there's a lot of opportunity out there. So, if anyone is like getting deep into agent development, like hit me up if you've, if you're very skilled at it, we're working at another company or something, hit me up. Like, let me know.
Oh, maybe some job offers for you in that message there. Well, best of luck to everyone, and do remember to like and subscribe. Give us 5 stars if you can. Gotta juice those numbers to make sure other people hear about this pod. And yeah, thanks a lot for your time, everyone. Yeah,
Later, everybody.
Have a great weekend.